In this video, I'm about to show you 10 organic butter brands you need to avoid and why, along with 5 that are actually safe and worth buying, starting with number 10, Horizon Organic. Let's be honest, Horizon Organic is the kind of brand you pick up almost automatically when you want to feel like you're making a better grocery choice. The green packaging, the word organic, the clean design, it all works together to give you that quiet confidence before you even look at the ingredients. And that's exactly the point. Horizon Organic butter is made from certified organic cream, and depending on the version, it's usually just cream and sometimes salt, nothing complicated or heavily processed. That simplicity is part of its appeal because it fits the idea people have of clean dairy without a long ingredient list. It also follows USDA organic standards, which means things like no synthetic hormones or antibiotics in production and controlled feed for cows. So there is a real regulated system behind the label, not just marketing language. But here's where the consumer mindset kicks in. Most people imagine organic butter as something small batch, farm fresh, and slightly personal. Horizon, on the other hand, is actually a large-scale national brand operating in a corporate dairy system. So what you're really buying is not exclusivity, it's standardized organic production at the mass retail level. And that's the interesting tension here. It genuinely meets organic certification standards, but the experience is still shaped by industrial-scale distribution. So it feels premium in your head, while still being a mainstream supermarket product in reality. Number 9. 365 Whole Foods Market Organic Butter. Have you ever picked something off the shelf just because the packaging feels like it belongs in a better lifestyle? 365 Whole Foods Market Organic Butter is exactly that kind of product. Clean design, calm branding, and a "you're making a smart choice" feeling are built right into the label. But behind that polished simplicity, the reality is more straightforward than the vibe suggests. This is a private label butter from Whole Foods Market, produced for large-scale retail distribution. It follows USDA organic standards, meaning the milk comes from certified organic dairy systems, and the ingredient list stays intentionally minimal, usually just organic cream, sometimes salt, depending on the version. So yes, on a factual level, it is a regulated organic product with a very clean formulation. Nothing hidden, nothing overly processed. But the interesting part is how it's positioned in your mind. Because the branding makes it feel slightly more premium or curated than a standard supermarket butter, even though it operates within a big retail system designed for consistency, pricing control, and mass availability across stores. So the real story here isn't about safety or quality concerns, it's about perception. It looks like a small, thoughtful choice. But structurally, it's still a large-scale store brand working inside an industrial organic supply chain. Number 8. Great Value Organic Butter. Sometimes the most ignored-looking product in the aisle is also the one most people end up buying without a second thought. Great Value Organic Butter is exactly that. Simple branding, low visual noise, and a price point that quietly removes hesitation from the decision. And that's not accidental. It's a strategy. This is Walmart's private label organic butter, built for mass retail distribution. It follows certified organic production standards, meaning the milk comes from regulated organic dairy systems where synthetic hormones and antibiotics are restricted and feed sources are controlled. The ingredient list remains extremely minimal, typically just organic cream and sometimes salt, with butter itself containing about 80% milk fat, which is standard for most traditional butter products. From a market perspective, private label dairy products like this play a significant role in grocery retail, competing directly with branded options while offering lower prices and consistent availability. That's why they are widely stocked and heavily rotated in everyday shopping baskets. But the interesting part isn't the nutritional profile, it's behavior. Because this product doesn't rely on premium storytelling, it works by blending into routine buying habits. It feels good enough for daily use, which makes it an easy repeat purchase rather than a considered choice. Number 7. Simple Truth Organic Butter. Sometimes a brand doesn't convince you with facts, it convinces you with how it sounds. Simple Truth is one of those names that feels like it's already been approved by someone you trust. It doesn't push hard, it doesn't look aggressive, It just quietly sits there like the obvious choice. And that's where the influence starts. This butter is part of Kroger's in-house organic line, which means it's produced at scale for wide supermarket distribution. The formulation itself stays minimal, typically just organic cream, sometimes salt, which aligns with what people expect from a basic butter product. But here's the shift most people don't notice. The brand doesn't try to sell indulgence or premium quality. It sells certainty. The idea that you don't need to question anything because the answer is already in the name? That reduces friction in decision-making, which is exactly what large retail brands aim for. So instead of comparing options or thinking deeply about sourcing, most people just go with it because it feels like the safe default. And that's the real position here. Not luxury, not uniqueness, just a product designed to feel trustworthy enough that you stop looking for alternatives. Number 6. Kirkland Signature Organic Butter. Kirkland Signature is the kind of brand people trust without even realizing it. You see it, and your brain immediately goes, this is probably a safe bet. No overthinking, no label checking, just straight into the cart. And that's exactly where things get interesting, because that trust replaces curiosity. Kirkland Organic Butter is made for Costco's bulk retail system, which means it's produced in large volumes for consistency across warehouses. It's typically graded AA butter, a classification used in the US, for higher quality butter in terms of texture and flavor, and the ingredient list stays simple, just organic cream, sometimes salt. So technically, it checks all the right boxes, but here's the real shift. This product isn't competing to be the most unique or the most premium butter on the shelf. It's competing to be the one you don't have to think about, the one that works for everything. Cooking, baking, and everyday use, without standing out too much in any direction. And even in real use, that shows up. It performs well, stays consistent, but doesn't have the richer texture or depth you'd expect from smaller, more specialized butter products. So the real identity here isn't luxury or craftsmanship. It's trust-driven convenience at scale, a product you rely on, not one you explore. Number 5. Members Mark Organic Butter. Members Mark is exactly the kind of brand that quietly convinces you you're making a smarter choice. You see it in bulk at Sam's Club. The pricing looks efficient, the packaging feels clean, and it gives off a "you're saving money" without compromising quality vibe. But that's how these warehouse brands pull you in. They sell you the feeling of value while giving you something built for volume. Because once you look past the bulk packaging, this isn't some carefully crafted organic butter from a small dairy. It's a product designed to move through a high-volume retail system, where the priority is consistency, shelf stability, and cost efficiency across massive quantities. Yes, it's real butter, yes, it's organic, and yes, it usually meets AA grade standards, which means it meets acceptable benchmarks for texture and flavor. But those standards are about uniformity, not richness, not depth, and definitely not craftsmanship. And then there's the production reality. Butter made at this scale is processed to behave the same way every single time, whether it's sitting in storage, transported in bulk, or used across different kitchens. That kind of consistency doesn't come from slow, traditional methods. It comes from controlled, industrial systems. So is Members Mark a practical choice? Of course. Is it designed to feel like a smart upgrade? Absolutely. But that's the catch. What you're really getting is a mass-produced organic butter built for efficiency, dressed up as a value win. It works, it's reliable, but it's far from the kind of product people imagine when they think of quality butter. Number 4. Lucerne Organic Butter. Lucerne is one of those brands that doesn't try too hard to impress you, and that's exactly why people trust it. You'll find it sitting quietly in the dairy section, no big claims, no premium storytelling, just a name that's been around long enough to feel familiar. And that familiarity is doing more work than you think. Because Lucerne isn't a small dairy brand, it's actually part of a large private label system tied to major grocery chains like Albertsons, Safeway, supplying products across multiple categories at scale. So what you're really looking at isn't a single farm or a distinct butter-making philosophy. It's a multi-category production network built to deliver consistent dairy products across thousands of stores. Now, on paper, the butter itself looks standard. It's typically made from cream, sometimes salted, with basic nutrition, around 100 calories and 11 g of fat per tablespoon, which is exactly what you'd expect from conventional butter. But here's where things shift. This product isn't built to stand out, it's built to blend in. When butter is produced at this scale, the goal isn't depth of flavor or uniqueness, it's uniformity. Every stick has to taste the same, behave the same, and last through distribution without variation. That kind of consistency comes from controlled industrial production systems, not small batch craftsmanship. Number 3. Clover Sonoma Organic Butter. You ever see a brand that looks so farm-friendly you almost don't question it? Clover Sonoma plays exactly in that space. The soft packaging, the clean dairy aesthetic, the word Sonoma. It all quietly builds this idea that you're buying something local, calm, and closer to nature. And that's where the impression usually stops. Because Clover Sonoma isn't some small countryside butter brand sitting outside the system. It's part of a large-scale California dairy operation that sources from multiple farms and distributes across major retail channels. The farm feel is more about branding language than actual small-scale production. The butter itself is straightforward, made from organic cream, nothing complicated or hidden in the ingredient list. Nutritionally, it falls within the standard butter range, at about 100 calories per tablespoon, which doesn't really set it apart from other mainstream options. But the real trick is perception. You're not reacting to the product, you're reacting to the story around it. The branding makes it feel like you're choosing something closer to nature, when in reality, you're just choosing a well-packaged version of a very standard dairy product. So it's not about something being wrong with it, it's about how easily farm-like identity can replace actual transparency in your mind. Number 2, Open Nature Organic Butter. You know that moment when a brand name feels like it's trying a little too hard to sound honest? Open Nature sits exactly in that zone. It's designed to feel like you're stepping away from processed food and getting closer to something pure, simple, almost untouched. And that's the first layer of the illusion. Open Nature is actually a private label brand sold through major supermarket chains like Albertsons and Safeway, which means it's not a standalone farm-style producer. It's a retail-owned line built to compete in the organic space at scale. The natural identity is mostly branding language, not a reflection of small batch production. The butter itself is simple, organic, cream-based, with minimal ingredients and no unnecessary additives, which is standard for organic butter across most brands. Nutritionally, it sits in the normal butter range. Nothing unusual, nothing extreme, just typical dairy fat content found in regular butter products. But here's where perception quietly takes over. The name Open Nature creates a mental shortcut. It makes you feel like you're buying something closer to nature, something less processed, something more transparent. But in reality, you're still within a large retail ecosystem where products are designed, packaged, and positioned to build mass consumer trust. So the real story isn't about quality being good or bad. It's about how easily a name can make something feel more natural than it actually is, and how often that feeling replaces real scrutiny at the shelf. Number 1, Wegmans Organic Butter. Wegmans is one of those brands that immediately feels honest, just because the store experience itself is so clean and controlled. When you see Wegmans Organic Butter on the shelf, it doesn't scream marketing. It feels calm, simple, almost like it doesn't need to prove anything. And that quiet confidence is exactly what makes people trust it. Wegmans Organic Butter is a private label product from Wegmans, a regional supermarket chain known for tighter quality control compared to many mass grocery brands. It's made from organic cream, and the ingredient list stays minimal, basically what you'd expect from traditional butter without extra additions. So on the surface, it genuinely looks like a straightforward, well-made product. But here's the deeper layer. Because Wegmans has a strong reputation for high-quality store-brand items, people often assume everything under its label automatically belongs to a higher tier. That trust becomes part of the product itself. You're not just evaluating butter, you're relying on the store's overall reputation to do the judging for you. And that's where perception quietly steps in. The butter itself is standard in structure and nutrition, but the feeling around it is what elevates it in the buyer's mind. It feels more curated, more selective, more thought through than typical supermarket butter, even when the actual product is fairly straightforward. But don't worry, it's not all bad. There are actually 5 butter brands that are cleaner, more reliable, and actually worth your money, starting with number 5, Kerrygold. There's a reason Kerrygold shows up in conversations where people start talking about better butter. It doesn't feel like a random supermarket pick. The branding alone already gives you that slightly premium, almost European specialty vibe before you even read anything. And then you find out why. Kerrygold is an Irish butter made from milk sourced in Ireland, and the big talking point is that it comes from grass-fed dairy systems, which tends to give it a richer color and a more noticeable flavor compared to standard everyday butter. But what actually makes people stick with it isn't the story, it's the experience. It feels different when you cook with it. Slightly richer, slightly more present in taste, especially in baking, where butter isn't just background, it actually shows up in texture and flavor. So it doesn't rely on convincing you with claims. It wins you over in small moments, toast, baking, simple cooking, where you suddenly notice, okay, this tastes a bit better than the usual. It's still just butter, but with a personality you can actually taste. Number 4. Plus gras. Plus gras is not the kind of butter that tries to get your attention on the shelf. It's quieter than that, almost like it assumes you already know why you're picking it. And that's the whole vibe. This is a European-style butter with higher butterfat content than standard American butter, which is why bakers and chefs tend to prefer it. That extra richness isn't about being fancy. It directly changes how it behaves in cooking. In real use, you feel it most in baking. Dough feels more tender, pastries come out a bit richer, and even simple recipes get a slightly more finished texture. But Plus gras doesn't market itself like a lifestyle product. There's no emotional storytelling pushing farm imagery or wellness angles. It's more like a tool, something chosen for performance rather than identity. So the personality here is simple. It doesn't try to convince you it's special. It just quietly shows up in recipes where butter actually matters and lets the results speak for themselves. Number 3. Organic Valley. You can usually tell a lot about a brand just by how it shows up on the shelf, and Organic Valley gives off a very different energy compared to typical supermarket dairy. It feels less like a mass market label and more like something built around a cooperative mindset, where the story is not just about selling butter, but about where it comes from. Organic Valley is actually a farmer-owned cooperative in the United States, meaning it's made up of independent organic family farms working together under one brand. That structure already sets it apart from standard private label products because the focus is more on farming practices and sourcing rather than just retail scale and pricing. The butter itself is straightforward, made from organic cream with a clean ingredient profile and no unnecessary additives. But what makes it stand out is the consistency of its sourcing approach. It's positioned around supporting organic dairy farming rather than just producing a generic grocery item. So the experience here feels a bit more intentional. You're not just buying butter off a shelf. You're buying into a system that is more closely tied to farm-level production values, even though it still operates within a national distribution network. Number 2. Vital Farms. Vital Farms has a very different personality compared to most butter brands. It immediately leans into transparency as its identity. From the packaging to the messaging, everything is built around the idea that you should actually know where your food is coming from, not just assume it. The brand is known for sourcing from small family farms that follow pasture-raised dairy practices, meaning cows have access to open grazing rather than being kept in confined systems. That detail alone is a big part of how the brand positions itself in the organic and ethical food space. The butter itself is simple in composition, made from cream and focused on clean, minimal ingredients. But what really defines it is not just what's inside, it's how openly the sourcing story is communicated. You often see farm-level traceability and transparency built directly into the branding. So the overall experience feels more grounded and traceable. It doesn't try to feel overly corporate or anonymous. Instead, it leans into a more human-scale farming narrative that makes the product feel closer to its origin. It's still widely available in stores, but the way it's presented makes it feel more connected to actual farming practices than typical large retail dairy brands. Number 1. President. Some brands don't need to explain themselves too much. The name alone already sounds like it belongs to a higher tier of dairy. President is exactly that kind of brand. It feels French, slightly formal, and, in your head, automatically more premium before you even see the product. And that perception is intentional. President is a French dairy brand known globally for butter and cheese products, and it's widely associated with European-style dairy culture. In butter specifically, it often leans toward a richer, more indulgent profile compared to standard everyday supermarket butter, which is why it shows up a lot in cooking and baking contexts, where flavor actually matters. The experience is usually what people notice first. It doesn't feel bland or purely functional. There's noticeable depth of flavor that makes it stand out in simple uses like spreading or melting into food. That slightly richer profile is part of why it's often seen as a step-up option in many kitchens. But what really defines President is not just the product, it's the positioning. It sits in that space where butter feels a little more culinary rather than just a grocery basic. So when people pick it, they're usually not just buying butter, they're choosing something that feels a bit more intentional in cooking.